So we're being joined tonight on Timber Talks to by Stuart ONeill, who's the author of a little book, and that's it there. Oop, face it the right way. Just One Reason. I found out about Just One Reason because it kept popping up on my Facebook page. So, and obviously Stuart was spending a little money on getting the ad sponsored, and I kept seeing it and putting it off. And then one day I decided I'd have a look and check out what it was all about. And then I ended up buying 15 copies to give away to people because I was so impressed with the book. Now, before we get into the book itself, I'll introduce Stuart. Welcome, Stuart.
G'day, Tim. Thanks for having me.
No, that's all right. Thank you. So, Stuart, where were you brought up?
I was born and bred in Melbourne, suburbia, various suburbs of Melbourne, but mostly inner city, I guess you'd say, like, 5-10 k's from the city, that sort of region.
Oh, that makes sense if you're a Richmond supporter. So
yeah, indeed,
yep.
Indeed.
I was brought up in Beaumaris, so I'm a St Kilda supporter. So
okay, I know that area really well. Yep.
And you're living in the Highlands of New South Wales at the moment, but from what I've read about you and what's written in the book, you've been around a little bit as well.
Oh, I have. I bailed out of Melbourne in my early 20s for just personal reasons. I got sick of traffic and having to drive so far to work all the time. So I headed off on a big adventure and ended up in Western Australia, had a child and got all sorts of things happening over there. And then I think I made it back over east in 1997 or something along those lines, thereabouts. And then following that, I moved to the Northern Rivers and lived there until 2 weeks ago.
And moved to the Highlands. So
and moved to the Highlands.
What was your main occupation during those times? Or have you had many?
Well, there's not a short answer. I guess being a person that never went to school a lot and didn't do very well at school, I've pretty much, ever since I can remember, Tim, I've just continually had to reinvent myself and my skill set, and then accommodate my physical limitations over the years as well, because, grunt work doesn't work so well for you when you hit your mid-50s. So, I have to do things a little bit differently. But yeah, it's been a reinvention for a long period of time.
Do what you need to do to get
pretty
you through,
much,
basically. Yeah.
Pretty much, yes. Yeah, pretty much.
So are you a man of many hats then? Have you picked up various skills along the way?
It's actually it's a real blessing, really, Tim, because I probably, without any qualifications, I'm nearly one of the most skillful people that I know. So, like, being able to figure stuff out. If it's something's broken, I can fix it. If something's not working, I'll try and solve it. If I'm not sure where to go, like, I seem to be through all of this, like, I've become a really good problem solver, and I can do them fast, which is also a good thing as well for many situations.
Reading the book and going back through what was the reasons for the book, the reason the book was written, had you noticed or exhibited any mental health issues early on in life that you knew of?
When I look back now, I probably have to say no. I do know one of my first things, rather than necessarily sort of pigeonholing it, saying it's a mental health thing, like, I certainly became aware of some of my addictions early on in life. And by that, I mean, like, I enjoyed painkilling tablets. And so I never really had any big problems with those, but I am aware that when I'm not feeling well from a mental health aspect, painkilling tablets really magnify the situation for me.
Excuse me.
Yeah, tablets really magnify things for me. So I've had to learn to just ride through the bumps without medicating myself because I enjoy it too much. And so that, I guess, sort of underpinned a bit of what ended up happening with the book, is that I needed a non-medicated way to help myself cope and get myself out through the other side alive, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely, because I mean, that's the basis of a lot of addiction issues with people, is that they're trying to mask their feelings and emotions that are overwhelming them, and try to mask them and basically just feel better.
Yes. So I know, like, when I look back over my life, is like anything that's ever really shit that's really happened for me, Tim, has always been alcohol related at some point in time. And so, if I've spat the dummy or had a meltdown or whatever it happens to be, if I've injured myself or if I've got in trouble for doing the wrong thing, there's always been beers at some point behind some of the dumb things that I've done in my life.
How long did it take you to figure that out?
Hello? What? Hello? It still happens a little bit, and it's toned down now. Like, I remember after, and this is just Murphy's Law, but after Richmond won the grand final in 2017, like, it was just probably one of the funnest days of my life. And there must have been 300 people that were all dancing on a particular table after the game and whatnot. And I must have been the 301st, and they must have gone at 300. That's it, no more. So I'm finally getting my turn to dance on the table, and they bloody ripped me off and wanted to throw me out of the pub. And I'm like, oh, okay. I thought the numbers were just going to continue. So somehow or another, they go, no, get off, you're too drunk, or whatever the case was. But it was a fun situation rather than any animosity at all. It was just the bounce had enough, I guess, of people jumping up and down on tables at a pub.
So, and then reading through the book, there was a turning point in your life where something hit you very hard, and we'll class it as trauma. It was a trauma in your life. Are you able to explain to us what happened and what you went through?
So firstly, yes, it took me a long time, Tim, to realise that it actually was a trauma. Like, that's sort of even in recent years to realise that it wasn't just, you got your heart broken or your marriage ended or some shit happened in your life. Is actually, I realise now that it was a trauma, and that there is a PTS. Oh no,
That's all right.
And are you there?
Yep.
Sorry.
Yep,
Apologies for that.
That's right.
So yeah, it took me a while to realise that I'd actually been through not just that trauma, but other traumas as well. And so there was clearly an accumulation of a lot of that. I think, like, sort of from a male's perspective, perhaps, is, I think when a marriage is over, the man sort of goes, "What the hell?" And I think the other person's usually like been doing their planning for 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 years, or whatever that period of time is. And so I've sort of, like, these are just my own opinions, but I feel like the man ultimately grieves alone, and the other person who's departing gets to go through all of their grief with all the support network still in place. So whilst they've already dealing with whatever their hurt is and their sadness and other things within their own emotions, is they're doing that in the comfort of the family residence and with kids around and a degree of normality. And then when it finally gets to that point where things can't go on, the man actually then is basically all alone. And I think that contributes to the trauma, because the next person's moved on and ready to go. They've done all of their planning and adapting and processing and all that sort of stuff. And that when that happens, it's like it's day 300 for that person and day 1 for the person left behind. So that in itself, I think, is part of the trauma of what happens there. It's a big stack,
I did a men's health talk a little while ago, and one of the other speakers nearly explained exactly the same thing, that he came home one day and basically he didn't realise it was the end of his marriage, and she'd basically cut him off from everything: family, the house, money, everything. And like you said, that was the first he knew of it. Like she'd been planning it. That was the first he knew of it. And then suddenly he goes, where am I? What am I doing? Who am I now? I've built my life towards this, and now there's nothing. So, and like you said, it's getting across that idea into your head and then grieving for something that you've just lost without even realizing it, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I knew mine was coming, so I wasn't sort of like you know, what do they call it, blindsided.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, when all of that eventually does happen, is you're on your own, and women are far better at circling the wagons, I think, than us men are, and they do plan things and get themselves prepared for when that eventuates, and the man does no preparing whatsoever. And I don't know how, you know, next time round how that would be any different, but that's sort of, I guess, a bit how you feel of what comes along, and then it's just the shock of, wow, you know, like, and you know it's over, and you can sort of get used to that, but it's still, you know, you deal with your own emotions all on your own. And I've learned even a lot, you know, since then I've learned a lot that, you know, family don't want to come near you because they think that they're getting too close and your friends are looking after you, and your friends don't want to come near you because they don't want to intrude on the family, and ultimately you grieve alone is what I've discovered.
And were you finding that particular thoughts were going through your head that were starting to invade your mindset?
I have this I don't know what it's called. I have like a scenario habit that never turns off, Tim, where, you know, I've already in my mind going, if there was a car accident and this happened and this happened and this happened, this is what I'd do, A, B, C, and D. So like I spend my world caught up in scenarios almost 24/7, and including, like, you know, if I'm going to end my life, how am I going to do it? How will I do this? And just like, you know, I feel like in some ways I'm a bit OCD, like in terms of detail of how I go about this and consider this and consider that and all those things. So,
Because it then does come out in the book that you considered, and like you said, you're planning to take your life, of going through those scenarios about how you could do it.
Yeah, I still do. Like I had an episode only like 2 weeks ago, where I just the usual things that happen in my world sort of thing is I don't know how many people you know that have had 30 broken bones, but if you don't know too many people, I'm one of them now. So somehow or another, my life is a constant that I'm in hospital, broken bones, stitches, operations, you name it. It just never ever ends. And so we moved out here to where we are, in Deepwater, had our first hit of tennis at the local club in a comp, smashed into a brick wall, broke my arm. You know, that's sort of the story of my life in some ways. So, but anyway, when I left hospital, they loaded me up with tablets, and I'm like, the first night, I'm like, nah, I've just got a knot. The second night I had one. Third night I had one. The fourth night, I think it was, I was already up to 2, and then by the time a bit further I went along, I was on the 3, and I had full hallucinations. So I had some really, really big suicidal moments throughout that entire night, which scared the fuck out of me. And so I just know that I can't take the tablets, not just because I enjoy them, but what it also does to my brain when I'm in that state. It's like it's really scary, and there's no shortcut way out of it until the tablets wear off.
So those intrusive thoughts start to, as much as you've set up a sort of a shield against them, that's one of the things that breaks it down.
Yeah. So I just have to, you know, I'm my own worst enemy. It's like they were just too tempting. They were like Tic Tac sitting there waiting to be had, and I weakened and I paid the price. So that's certainly I stay away from that, because I get suicidal thoughts regardlessly, and the tablets just put it on steroids, even though they're painkillers.
One of the things that This Is My Brave in particular is about sharing stories about lived experience of mental health issues and suicide prevention and early intervention. And we do that because we believe that using people's stories or getting people to share their stories is a great guide for other people, is that when they're starting on their journey and they don't know a lot about it, hearing other people's journey is really helpful for them. And I know that you've gone down that path with the book. That's why the book is there, because you've written a guide basically for people to look at themselves and go, and you've written, it's the name of the book, Just One Reason Why I Should Still Be Around. And to put that thought in their head instead of the other thought, replace it. I use the analogy of fill up your bank with positive thoughts instead of the negative ones. And so
Yeah, definitely.
the same sort of thing. So
Yes.
So you've put a couple of reasons in there. What was the first big one that well, it doesn't have to be a big one, does it? It just needs to be, what was the first one that came up to you? Just one reason when you were doing the pros and cons, which you were doing.
So so some of my reasons not to was like in different situations is like I set out to cause damage to a person and to myself on a particular night. And then so I was driving there and had beers and whatnot else. And then it dawned on me that knowing my luck, I bloody hit a tree on the way there, and I'll just look like I was a drunk driver. So I turned around and came home and go, this is stupid. I have to plan this a bit better. So, you know, that I can sort of laugh at it now, but it didn't feel funny at the time. But I sort of, you know, I had that type of situation, I guess, in that instance. And then other times it's like around when things were really at its worst, Tim, like I built a really nice house for our family, and all I could see was another tradie's boots at my front door. And I'm like, I didn't build all of this and go through what I went through to get this thing all done for someone else's benefit and enjoyment. So I was like, my will's not in place. It's not correct. So if this happens, if I was to die tonight, there's nothing I can do to prevent those tradies' boots potentially appearing at the house that I built. So not to say that there's another tradie in the wind, but, you know, like just another man's boots. But that was, I was visualizing like, oh, there's no way known a tradie's going to live in my house with my kids that I built, sort of thing. So that became a motivator for me back then to go, I need to fix some things first. And then that morphed, Tim, into like, I became too scared to get my will sorted out properly, because I thought then if I've got all of that in place and everything happens that I want to happen after I die, I can go. So then I couldn't change my will for nearly 3 years. So I just had to like find other ways to sort of keep giving myself reasons not to. And it was many and varied. It was my kids, it was my house, it was my mum. You know, my mum's a beautiful old lady and fragile in herself. And it's like, what happens to my mum if I go? She'd be dead the next day. Like she wouldn't be able to cope at all. So all of these things were all part of my one reasons at the time. But, you know, what I know right now is that my one reason changes all the time too. And it doesn't have to be, constant, and it can be the same reason, and it doesn't matter if it's not. And it doesn't matter if you have 51 reasons. As long as you have one, it's okay.
Yeah.
And that became like the essence for me with the book, to go, shit, you know, I became aware of like the situations, like when I was at one of my really worst moments, Tim. I was overseas and for work, and I was in a foreign country, and I pretty much had worked out how I was going to do this so that my boys would never know that Dad had suicided, that I'd die just a dickhead tourist across the road without looking, so to speak. And then so getting all of that done, and where's my passport going to be left behind, and, you know, starting to do a whole lot of planning. And then it dawned on me that it's like, what a shit day that is for the taxi driver. You know? And so I had compassion for the taxi driver and went like, how selfish am I? Not for wanting to check out of life, but like the damage that I'm going to cause to another person's future just because I chose to stand in front of their bus or their taxi. It's just like, that just felt completely morally wrong for me. So that became my reason then. So that was a good thing too, that
Yeah,
rather
that's interesting that you said that it doesn't have to be the same reason over and over. It can be sometimes, but it depends on the situation. Like you said, you want to walk out in front of a taxi, and then you've got that thought process in your head going, well, what happens to the poor taxi driver? What happens to his family and his
yes,
job and all these sorts of things? And you go,
yes.
yeah, not the perfect situation for him.
No, so I constantly had those sorts of situations, and and there's I guess I don't know. Some of them are funny stories now, in a sense that I can laugh at it, but they still hurt and they're raw. But I can look back now at some of the situations that occurred around that time, and yeah, it's just I can't share that story with too many people because it's not just that it's personal. Sometimes it's just not necessary to go into that. I just can enjoy that laugh on my own. It's not. I can't sit down with my kids and say this happened and that happened, and I just sit and have a reflection on it on my own, I guess.
So constantly coming up with a reason not to, or the opposite, a reason to keep going. I suppose they're two different things, aren't they?
Yeah.
Do you think that there's just that little kernel inside of yourself going, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And things are going to keep popping into my head for a reason not to.
I don't know, Tim. Like even today, I was having a bit of a meltdown, and I'm just like, I can't fucking do this anymore. Like, and I just know that I have to press on. But even today, I had the shits with a few things, and I'm like, oh God, I'm just exhausted of myself, and it's like, you know what, got to be easier. And then I'm like, oh, my youngest boy, like, oh God, I imagine what's going to be like for him the next day, sort of thing, So I catch myself like that. But today I was just like, God, it'd be easier. Like I've achieved what I needed to achieve. I'm 55. I'm not going to have more kids. Like, I've been married, I've been divorced. My kids are healthy. They're all off doing their own thing. It's like, I'm comfortable that, and not that I want this to happen to him, but, if I died tomorrow, literally in an accident or something like that, I'd be okay with that. Like if I live to 90 with good health, good on it, but I certainly don't want to live to 90 with bad health, that's for sure.
So where did the idea for the book come from?
It came, firstly, I started writing to myself and figuring out what happened when I was in Taiwan. And like, it wasn't until it had happened, part of it, so many times that I realized that I kept finding a reason not to. So I never set out to have a reason at that time, but then something would pop up, and then all of a sudden I'd go, oh, actually, and then so this pattern continued to be there. And so it sort of became fairly real. And then at the time, one of the things that happened in my world, which was just fabulous, Tim, was that like right at the very peak of all of the shit that was going down in my world, I'd opened up a little hole in the wall coffee shop. And so my customers became my counselor and I became theirs. And so I couldn't have landed better on my feet in some ways because I was never alone. I didn't have to chase friends. People would come into the shop and say, "G'day, how's your day going?" And then I could also detect how another person's going. And so the book sort of, it got a bit brainstormed with me and some of my customers during that time. It sort of, started to grow some legs and some ideas, and then I'd sketch things out, and I basically wrote the book with a pencil and a piece of paper and a stapler. And eventually I found someone who could turn that into what you see today, Kelly, who did an amazing job. But if I'd never come across Kelly, there's no book, basically. Like, she did an amazing job to turn my scribble into something legible.
And it's not just a book that you just read, is it?
It's a carry around book. It's sort of, to me, it becomes a valued piece of your world, just like your iPhone is that if you've got thoughts written into that book and other things, it's something that you really, it's valuable to you in the sense that you don't want anyone else potentially to see what you've been privately writing or how you're feeling, or someone knows that you're not actually going that well. So part of all of that was like, when I did all the book in the beginning, I was just thinking 99% of the people that take this book are going to be a man, and if they're anything like me, then I wreck things a lot. Like I can't wear jewelry because I'm going to bend a ring or break a necklace, or like I'm rough for that sort of stuff. And so I thought, if it was a book for me, then I was intended to have for 5 or 10 years. I almost need to have it like as sturdy as a Bible, in a sense. So all of that came into my mind, thinking like, what's a bloke going to do? Does anyone want to hop on a plane with a big book that says something's going wrong in my world and sit there next to someone else? You almost want to be able to like hide and just have a little read of that. So all of those things came into how would I want to be like given a book, and what type of book, and all of those sorts of things. And it came down that I needed something. I felt like I'd be more inclined when I'm feeling shit to read something that was small and on the point and concealable.
So I suppose the question is, why did you write it?
Because I've been a problem solver and a fixer for as long as I can remember. Like as a kid, and then as a young adult, trying to fix my parents, and then trying to fix my parents' businesses, and then trying to fix other people's businesses. And I've just constantly been a problem solver, and to this day. So I'm like, that's worked for me. The chances are, and some people would say I'm average, some people would say I'm not. I don't know. I think I'm very middle of the road in lots of ways. And so I'm like, if it worked for me, the chances are it might work for Tim. So at some point in time, it's like, why wouldn't I want to create something that's scalable, that's low cost? And, there's a part of me that, whilst I understand government's a really necessary process, I think they just burn a whole lot of bloody money on expensive things that never work. And so for me, it was like, what if you could put something in someone's hand for less than $20 and it saves a life? It's like, and it's non-pharmaceutical and all that sort of stuff. So there was all those sorts of things that came into, there's a bit of like, fuck you going on in my world at the time when I was creating it, going like, we don't all need pills. Some people do, but maybe some of us don't. And there might be another way to try and help us a bit. And it's worked. And it's still working.
Did the writing, so how did the writing help you?
The writing, I guess, it's just a cathartic process. Like I had to really, really battle with editors to get the book down to the size that it is, because it was triple the size, and just to keep trying to refine it down and down so that it became just like a distillation of my thoughts and ideas and other bits and pieces. And some of the hardest parts of the book was choosing the photos and the sentences that went after the photos, and having the book just trying to map it out was probably nearly the hardest part. Like I think I sat on that for like a year, pulling the pages apart and going, should this page go here, should that page go there, all that sort of stuff, and just working out, and you want to be able to, ultimately you can pick up the book and open it up at any page. You don't have to start from the beginning, and it doesn't matter if you don't finish the book either,
Yeah, we do. This is my bro. We do a lot of storytelling events and guiding people in how to put a story together, but we limit them to 5 minutes. And 5 minutes is not a lot for a person's story. And what we try and do, and I imagine that that's what you've had to do with your book, is to get it down to the essence of what you were trying to say.
Yeah.
Even though there was a lot of things going on that were contributing to that part of the story, but having to take them out and go, what's the essence? What is the message I'm trying to get across?
Yeah, and one of the profound things, Tim, that happened along the way is like every single person that's had any involvement with my book has had some form of their own mental health situation go on, and that pattern has continued to this day. There's like every person that's got even the remote association to the book, even the main IT person who helps me, his wife's father suicided, and then a person who's doing some things in America for me, her son suicided early this year, sadly, and that pattern just continues, whether it's the editor or the web person. It's just like, so it's been a really good tool in that it's brought all of us people together as well.
because storytelling at its essence gives other people the freedom and the space to share their stories as well. That's the thing, is that you put your story out there and someone else says, oh, it's all right for me to share my story because they've shared their story, and somebody else does it and somebody else does it, because we'll do it as a group, and we'll have the group come in and they'll be very quiet, and then by the end of what we've been doing and we're going to our live event, they can't shut up because they know they're in a space where people understand what they're talking about, because not a lot of people do understand. That's the thing.
Yes.
And unfortunately, there is that level of stigma that still exists around, number one, suicide, and number two, mental illness itself.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Like within, as part of all of this, the book and things, Tim, like it's morphed into, like, we just set up a private, and we sort of brainstormed it a bit, a couple of us, but we set up a private online group on Facebook just for the book, and from the start, we created a few parameters in there that, you know, just to try and keep the group safe. And we wouldn't allow people to come in there and try and promote and all sorts of different things. But the quirkiness of whatever the framework was that we created, the group's now got 1,600 people in it.
Wow.
And what's happening is they're all counselling each other informally through lived experience and opening up. So people are comfortable within the group now to come out and say, I've just had a bastard of a day and here's what happened. And then all of a sudden 15 people pile in with comments and a bit of love goes around, and you know, all of a sudden the bloke goes, actually, you know what, I feel all right now.
Yeah. I can get through another day. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and it's beautiful because I sit back and watch it and it runs itself. There's people in there behind the scenes, but like I sit back and just observe it and go, how amazing is this? Like, and it's free. It's like, it's just, if there was a way that the government could create 50 more of these groups somewhere, however it is, it'd be like fantastic, because it's keeping people alive. And I never in my wildest dreams thought that 1,600 people would be indirectly counselling each other. And someone put up a post yesterday morning, I think it was, about like they're working on a project and can you just describe the group in one word? And so a lot of words got repeated for what it meant for different people, but I was surprised there's like 100 comments went up within like 24 hours of, and the over, what do you call it? Over, well, the most
overwhelming.
That one, the word was that people felt safe to share their story. And as soon as you start talking, I think you can start healing.
Oh, definitely. Well, I think that goes with being heard as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yes. Yeah. But it's just great. It's just like, wow, it's all that sort of stuff still sort of stuns me a bit, just to see that people are so willing to and wanting to like share their story. And but it's who else can you tell? I mean, you know that there's 1,600 other people that are lived experience and got their own issues. It's like people are more comfortable blurting out and going, this is what happened today or last week, or my kids haven't spoken to me for 9 years and I feel like this every night. And it's many and varied.
And it's hard because, look, you know, with people with mental health issues, and I've got my own, is you get, unfortunately, you go to a doctor and they're on a 15-minute appointment. So you can't talk about much in 15 minutes. So they put you on a mental health plan. Then you have to find a psychologist, and then you have to pay for that, and you have to repeat your story over and over again. And you feel like you get lost. You never get heard. And nothing much happens. And that's, I think, why when you put up a group to say you can just come in and chat and there's no rigmarole, you can be anonymous if you like, people go, fantastic. That's exactly what I'm looking for. And I think that's why your group has grown, because people are definitely looking for that. They don't want to be a doctor's report or a statistic. They want to be a person who's heard and listened to, and with other people who understand.
Yeah, and I think a huge thing that's happened, and sort of, it's a bit, I guess, like, you know, from a sociology aspect, Tim, is like loneliness is an enormous consideration today for mental health issues. And because you know, Australia's never been more transient, that people can leave and work on the other side of the country, and somehow or another, for the best intentions, you ring your parents every day and then it disappears, or your friends and things. And I see an enormous loneliness within the group. And I think that's a humongous thing. I don't know what governments can necessarily do to counter that today, but seeing people form friendships with people within the group, and they've never met in person, but they feel like that's their sister or their brother, or that just someone that they can fully trust. Is like people are just screaming out for like companionship, even if it's just like what we're doing right now. It's like it's amazing.
Yeah,
I think
it's connection. It's connection that people.
It really is connection. And the village is gone. You know, the days of walking up the street and going, parking your car and walking from the butchers to the grocers to the baker is over. You know, you walk in and out of Woolies anonymous and no one talks to you unless you bumped into the trolley, then they yell at you. And, you know, that whole social aspect of getting out of your house and doing some daily chores or whatever.
Well,
you know,
that neighbourhood
it's
thing is
over.
gone, because we're of an age where we can remember, we were kids, we knew everybody in the neighbourhood, we knew the next door neighbours, and we'd support each other and do all those sorts of things. But that just doesn't happen now. You're lucky to know who your next door neighbour is.
Yeah.
So you don't get that back and forth between them. And like you said, you go down the shops, you hardly know anybody. So
yeah. I think you know, the similarities and parallels of how we've gone as a country for the last 30 years compared to America is like, you know, we've got all these big giant satellite city type things with, you know, 300 shops all in one area with a basement car park, and people like going to Chadstone and those sorts of things. But the high street's gone, and I'm sure when that high street started to disappear, I'm certain that mental health problems started to increase.
Look, and I think you're right. I think that loneliness thing is spot on, and as much as people are, and there's bad sides of social media, definitely bad sides of social media, but it's another way of connecting. And like you said, you've connected 1,600 people together in one group from, I imagine, all different places, who have managed to come together. So the technology is helping us. We just need to be able to use it in the right way, don't we?
Absolutely. Tim, can I just pause for a tick? My phone's down to 7%. I'm just going to plug a cable and I'll be like,
no worries.
18 seconds or 19 seconds. I'm hoping that the laptop's got power. Where? Not yet. Oh, yep, there it goes. Okay, I'm going to hold it now. Okay. There we go. I'm back.
So, I mean, we're here talking about the book. There's half the book is your story, and then half the book is a little journal about focusing on, and it's sort of a mindful thing, isn't it? It's to focus on what you're thinking and trying to put things in there that are positive for you, and to find that just one reason, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's all of those things, Tim, and I think it's for people to actually see it in black and white, to understand the consequences of, like, if you actually do this, is like, what happens next? And I think that is sort of almost a handbrake in a sense, to go, oh, actually, shit, I didn't realise that. What happens to my ute? You know, like, I don't want my brother to get it. I'm not having them get that ute, or who's going to look after my dog? All those sorts of things, I think, are relevant in part of the decision-making process on. And I think that some people can have their 6 beers and get all fired up, and then, you know, there's that spontaneity part of it all, or you know, the others that are sitting back and going, oh shit, actually, I wouldn't want to do that to my best friend. I've seen what happened to them when that, you know. So there's a bit of trying to get people to reflect on some of that as well is part of the strategy within the book. is just to stop you in your tracks, because, you know, like I don't know if you sort of could relate to this, but I feel like life's like a bullseye a bit, Tim, and when things are at their shittiest, you're right in the center of the bullseye, the red part, but the storm passes, and whether that takes 5 minutes or 50 minutes or overnight or 5 days, is like it actually passes, and it's not until you go through the storm over and over that you realize that the storm's coming, and you can sense it and get yourself a bit more prepared, and then you can go, yep, that storm will pass because I know that it did last time and it did the time before that. So I've got used to that model myself a bit now.
There's a saying that's attributed to Winston Churchill, but some people say it's not. But when you're going through hell, keep going. So
100%.
And if you've got that reason, and you've got your book, and you've got your, I'm not going to show too much of the book because I want actually people to buy it. So I don't want them to get a free everything on the book, but there's pages like that in there which are to write your own things in there. Reflect on that particular page says reflect on your own one reason and things like that. And you're right, the size of it, the good thing is, like you said, if you're going through hell and you've got it in your pocket, you can put your hand down and go, it's there. And that immediately takes you from that thought you're having to the book. And you go,
correct.
Oh, hang on, there's something in there that I can read that will divert me from that part, hopefully.
But just the sensory part of the touch of knowing that it's in the pocket, you know, those sorts of things all help as well. And I felt like, Tim, like no one's going to want to carry a novel around to achieve the same purpose. And so that sort of part, I think, is the power of the book. Like someone wrote only like 5 days ago or something like this. I've given up trying to keep up with the comments that people write on Facebook now, and 99.9% of them are all amazing comments. But one person wrote the other day and said, why don't you just come out and say what the book actually is instead of being so secretive? And I'm like, it actually says it on the cover. It's on the cover. If you go to my website, it talks about just one reason. It's there, but the person thought the book was secretive for not actually revealing what was inside. It's just like, I've revealed it on the cover.
We're asking you to look at your one reason, figure out what it is and look at it and work on it and things like that. You have, and it's like I said, it's a good read. So what I'm going to be doing is that the people on our Facebook page or on our website, I'm going to ask them to write in, and I've got 14. No, I've already given one away, so I've got 13. I'll keep one for myself, so I've got 13 to give away to people. So I'm sure that they'll go very quickly. So I'd just like you to thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for writing the book, which is fantastic. It's a really good tool, and there needs to be more of it. And I, especially for men who don't know where to go, like you said, at that stage, they've come to a pivot in their lives that is either expected or unexpected, and they don't know what the next step is. This can help. I agree. I reckon it's really good, and there should be more of it. There should be more people putting their hand up and saying, I've got lived experience, so I can write a little bit of a guide for you. And the 1,600 people you've got on your Facebook group is testament to that. So, Stuart, thank you so much for talking to me tonight.
No worries, Tim. Thank you. It's great to catch up with you, and high five to what you're doing as well, because, you know, 1,001%'s all that up, and we're all doing our 1% in our own way, and collectively, like, I think we're winning, which is a fabulous thing. So
I think we are too. And thank you.
And this could be the Flanny podcast in the future.
I might mark it as that one. Caption it as that. So, all right. Thanks, mate.
No worries at all. Thank you. Cheerio. Bye-bye.